The wind was a blade, sharp and constant across the high mesa. It worried the thin fabric of her shift, found its way through the gaps in the rock overhang where she huddled. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light that pierced the gloom, the only movement besides the tremor in her hands. She was Ayana, though the name felt like a memory of another life, a life among the people who had cast her out. Her face, her form, they were wrong somehow. A deviation from the lines they understood, the beauty they cherished. They had looked at her, felt a coldness, a disquiet, and the elders had spoken. Outcast. The word had fallen like stones, heavy and final. Now only the wind and the rocks were her companions. Her belly ached with emptiness, a constant, gnawing reminder of her solitude. Every rustle of leaves, every distant cry of a hawk, sent a jolt of fear through her. She was vulnerable, a small, exposed creature in a vast, indifferent world. Days bled into nights, marked only by the harsh sun and the cruel, star-scattered darkness. Hunger was a clawing beast, thirst a fire in her throat. She scavenged for roots, for whatever tiny, skittering things she could catch, but her strength was failing. Despair settled over her like a shroud, thick and suffocating. She had nothing, no one. Her people had left her to the mercy of the elements, to the predators both two-legged and four. The shame of her difference burned hotter than the sun. To be unwanted, to be deemed unworthy of even a place on the fringes of the camp, was a wound that festered deep within her soul. She was alone, adrift in a sea of fear and pain, her only hope the slim chance of finding water or food before her body finally surrendered. Each sunrise felt less like a new beginning and more like a delayed ending. The future stretched before her, a terrifying, empty expanse. Her existence was reduced to the primal needs of survival, stripped bare of comfort, of belonging, of hope. She was a ghost haunting the land that had once been her home, invisible to those who had known her, visible only to the silent, watchful sky. The silence of the wilderness pressed in on her, amplifying the sound of her own ragged breath, the frantic beat of her heart. She was Ayana, the unwanted, the forgotten. It was the smell of smoke that reached her first, faint on the ever-present wind. Fear coiled tight in her gut. Humans, but not her people. A different scent, rougher, carrying the tang of leather and something she didn't recognize, tobacco. She flattened herself against the cold rock, heart hammering against her ribs. He appeared 2 days later, a figure on horseback silhouetted against the brutal sun. A white man, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a quiet competence that spoke of long miles and hard lessons. He dismounted near a small, hidden spring she had found, his movements deliberate, unhurried. He didn't see her, or if he did, he gave no sign. She watched him from her hiding place, every muscle tensed, ready to flee. He had eyes that seemed to take in everything, eyes the color of the distant, storm-bruised sky. He watered his horse, drank sparingly himself, then began to set up a rudimentary camp. His face was weathered, lined, a canvas of resilience and solitude. He moved with an economy of motion, tying up his horse, building a small, smokeless fire from dry scrub. The smell of coffee, bitter and strong, drifted towards her, a strange, enticing aroma she had never encountered. Hunger warred with terror. He was there for 3 days, a silent, watchful presence. He hunted small game with a quiet skill, cleaned it efficiently, cooked it over his fire. He didn't venture far from the spring. She remained hidden, observing him, cataloging his every move. He spoke to his horse sometimes, low, rumbling words she couldn't understand, but the tone was gentle. He seemed alone, like her, an island in this vast ocean of rock and sky. On the 4th morning, as he was packing up, she heard a sharp cry, the sound of a struggle, and then silence. Moments later, he reappeared, limping, clutching his arm. A snake bite. She saw the dark stain spreading on his sleeve. He reached his camp, his face pale, his movements suddenly less sure. He fumbled with something in his saddlebag, applied a poultice to the wound, but she could see the pain radiating from him, the way his jaw was clenched. He sank to the ground, leaning against a rock, eyes closed. This was her chance to slip away unseen, to disappear back into the landscape. But she hesitated. He was hurt. He was an outsider like her in a way. The memory of her own aching vulnerability, the raw, exposed feeling of being alone and in need, held her rooted to the spot. Slowly, tentatively, she emerged from her hiding place, her bare feet silent on the dusty ground. He opened his eyes as she approached, and for the first time, she saw surprise flicker there, quickly masked by a weary caution. His gaze swept over her, taking in her tattered shift, her gaunt frame, her face, the face that had earned her exile. She braced herself for the look of revulsion, of fear, that she was accustomed to seeing. But it didn't come. His expression remained unreadable, a mixture of pain and observation. She stopped a few paces away, hesitant. He didn't speak, just watched her. She gestured towards his arm, the dark stain. Then, using the few words she knew from occasional encounters with traders, and a lot of hand signs, she conveyed that she knew of plants that could help. His sky-colored eyes studied her face for a long moment. She expected dismissal, a wave of the hand, a command to leave. Instead, after a pause that stretched into an eternity, he gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. It was a silent invitation, a tentative bridge built across the chasm of language and difference. She felt a warmth spread through her, small but potent, a flicker of something other than fear. She spent the next hours gathering herbs, chewing them into a poultice as her grandmother had taught her, applying it carefully to the wound. He watched her work, his gaze steady, assessing. He offered her water, a small piece of dried meat, his movements slow and deliberate. She ate sparingly, her stomach unused to substance, but the food brought a surge of strength. They communicated in gestures, in shared glances, in the quiet sounds of the wilderness around them. His name, he conveyed through pointing to himself and saying a guttural sound, was Jed. She pointed to herself, whispering, Ayana. He didn't flinch at her name, didn't question her presence. He simply accepted her, a silent, wounded man accepting the help of a silent, outcast girl. As he began to recover, the tentative bridge between them solidified. He couldn't travel far with his arm, so they remained at the spring. He hunted, taught her rudimentary English words for things they saw: rock, water, sun, fire. She showed him how to find edible roots, how to make snares for small game. Their days fell into a quiet rhythm. The silence between them was not empty, but filled with observation, with a growing understanding. He never asked why she was alone, never spoke of her face. He simply treated her with a quiet dignity, a respect she hadn't known existed outside of the warmth of her family, before the casting out. She saw the loneliness in his eyes, the way he preferred the company of his horse and the vast sky to any human interaction. He was an outcast too, in his own way, a man carrying his own silent burdens. The harshness of the environment was a constant threat, but together they were more capable. He had strength and knowledge of the wider world. She had knowledge of the land, its secrets and dangers. A quiet partnership formed, born of necessity and a shared understanding of solitude. There was no judgment in his eyes, only a steady, unwavering presence. It was a balm to her raw, wounded spirit. She began to stand a little taller, to meet his gaze without flinching. She was no longer just Ayana, the unwanted. She was Ayana, the capable, the survivor, working alongside a man who saw her not for her difference, but for her worth. One evening, as the sun bled crimson across the horizon, painting the mesa in hues of fire and shadow, Jed became still. His sky-colored eyes narrowed, scanning the distance. She followed his gaze. Riders. Approaching fast. The dust they kicked up was visible even from afar. More white men, but these rode with a different intent. Harsh shouts carried on the wind as they drew closer. They were riders she had seen before, men who sometimes passed through this territory, known for their cruelty, their disregard for anyone who wasn't like them. Their eyes would linger on her, filled with a contempt that mirrored the judgment of her own people, but laced with a dangerous, predatory edge. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through her newfound calm. She shrank back against the rock face, her heart pounding. Jed's hand went to the worn handle of the pistol on his hip. His face was a mask of grim determination. There was no hesitation in him. He wasn't going to run. He was going to stand his ground. The riders were upon them quickly, their faces hard and cruel. They dismounted, surrounding the small spring, their eyes assessing, calculating. One, a man with a tangled beard and a sneer, saw Ayanna cowering behind Jed. He laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Well now, what have we here?" Looky what the drifter found. His gaze lingered on her face, and the familiar wave of revulsion and something darker washed over his features. "Thought you Injuns run off all your mistakes." The words were like a physical blow. Jed stepped forward, shielding her, his voice low and steady. "She's with me. Keep moving." The sneering man laughed again, joined by his companions. "With you? A girl like that? You got poor taste, friend. Maybe we'll take her off your hands. Or maybe we'll just have some fun first." Ayanna felt the ground tilt beneath her. This was the true danger, the one she couldn't fight with herbs or knowledge of the land. These men saw her as less than human, an object for their cruelty. But then she felt Jed's presence behind her, a solid, unwavering force. He hadn't hesitated. He stood between her and their malice, a silent promise of protection. The air crackled with tension. This was the moment, the culmination of her exile, her vulnerability, the tentative trust she had built with this stranger. Her fate, it seemed, rested on the steady hand and weary courage of a man who had every reason to abandon her, but chose not to. The sneer on the leader's face hardened. He reached for his own weapon. The quiet peace of their small camp shattered. The shots echoed through the canyon, sharp cracks that splintered the twilight air. Jed moved with surprising speed despite his still healing arm, drawing his pistol and firing with deadly accuracy. One rider went down with a cry. The others scrambled for cover, drawing their own weapons. Ayanna didn't freeze this time. Fueled by terror and a fierce protectiveness towards the man shielding her, she reacted instinctively. Grabbing a heavy rock, she hurled it with all her might at the nearest attacker, hitting him in the chest and staggering him just as he was aiming at Jed. It wasn't a killing blow, but it bought a precious second. Jed used it, dispatching another man. The remaining riders hesitated, unnerved by the swift, brutal resistance and the unexpected intervention of the unwanted girl. Seeing their advantage gone, and two of their number fallen, they cursed and remounted, galloping away into the fading light. Silence descended again, broken only by the labored breathing of Jed and Ayanna, and the moans of the injured men. Jed checked his horse, then quickly bound the wounds of the surviving attackers, disarming them before they rode away, leaving the dead behind. He turned to Ayanna, his sky-colored eyes holding a look she couldn't quite decipher. Surprise, perhaps, and something akin to respect. You saved my hide," he said, his voice rough. It was the most words he had spoken at once. Ayanna only nodded, her chest heaving, the adrenaline slowly draining away. She looked at the retreating figures, then back at Jed. He hadn't abandoned her. He had fought for her, risked his life. And she, the girl cast out for being wrong, had found strength in the face of ultimate fear, fighting alongside the man who accepted her. In the days that followed, their bond deepened further. The threat had forged something unbreakable between them. Jed's arm healed, and soon he was ready to move on. But he didn't suggest leaving her. He spoke, slowly, painstakingly, of the world outside, of towns, of work he could do. He offered her a choice, implicitly, wordlessly, to stay in the wilderness alone, or to come with him. The choice was no choice at all. She had found a place beside this quiet, resilient man, a sanctuary built not of stone, but of mutual respect and shared survival. Her face, her difference, had not mattered to him in the moments of fear and blood. What mattered was courage, loyalty, the will to stand against the darkness. She left the mesa with Jed, the wind still sharp, but feeling different this time. It no longer felt like a blade cutting her off from the world, but like a force urging her forward. She was still Ayanna, the girl born somehow wrong, but she was also Ayanna, the survivor, the fighter, the one who had found acceptance where she least expected it. Her journey was not over, the path ahead uncertain, but she walked it with a newfound strength, a quiet dignity. She carried the resilience of the mesa within her, and the steady, unwavering presence of the man who had offered her a second chance, who had seen past the surface to the spirit within. In his eyes, she wasn't an outcast. She was simply Ayanna, a partner on the long, winding road ahead. And for the girl who had known only rejection, that was everything.